Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shea Station podcast. Just want to say at the top of the show, my dear friend Jerry Blevins did lose his voice this weekend while doing SNY pre and post game. He's only going to be on for the first 10 minutes before he bows out because, you'll hear it in his voice and you'll understand. So today's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. Not too much good stuff to recap. Obviously, you can tell if you've been watching Mets baseball. If you do want to hear more, I'm going to be going on my friend Shelfie's podcast, another John Boy Media member. He does the Cherry Pinstripes podcast, which is a Philly-centered show. We're going to be talking a lot about that Mets-Phillies series, so if you're interested in hearing any of that, I'm sure there'll be some video coming out today, so look out for that. I'll make sure I post it to my platforms and Shay's platforms as well. But if you're just here for the Mets talk, it's a little bit of a shorter episode, but without further ado, here it is. Today is Monday, May...
What's up, buddy?
Oh, no. Today is Monday, May 20th, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you play in the NL East, you're probably going to beat the Mets. Let's talk about it.
Shea Station, Jerry and Jolly. Shea Station, Jerry and Jolly. Riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull up my fans. Now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shea Station.
Welcome back to the Shea Station podcast, guys. It was another tough weekend of Mets baseball, to say the least. The last game they played, they won, which is what they've been doing a lot this season. They've been winning the last game of the series. It's just everything else has been going wrong. A lot to cover. The Edwin Diaz fiasco, another Francisco Lindor slump. JD Martinez has come alive. Sean Manaea has looked good, but the team as a whole is still struggling. They're 21-26, and they've lost a series to the Miami Marlins, which is the last thing I wanted to say coming into this Monday at the office. But we're going to talk about it. I'm Jolly. That is Jerry. Jerry, how you doing, man?
Good. If you guys watched the pre and post game, I lost my voice.
Oh, I couldn't tell,
I didn't even
actually.
get to work on Saturday.
Sound normal.
Came back a little bit yesterday, but this is how the morning goes. So this is what we're rolling with.
If you want, I can put it on my deep voice, too.
You want me to go even deeper?
Yeah, maybe we'll just do like an ASMR episode because we're deep voice sad. Yeah, tough weekend. You were in the SNY studios recapping that tough weekend, doing a great job covering the Edwin Diaz stuff. But yeah, Mets continue their losing skid against the NL East. They salvaged the final game in Philadelphia. Could have been a better series had some things gone their way. Instead, they lose 3 or 4. They go to Miami. They don't show up the first night, essentially. They lose a heartbreaker in game 2 and then clean it up in game 3. I guess there's no real place to start other than Edwin Diaz, who's kind of been the story of this entire week. It is a tough story. We heard from Steve Gelbs that there was tears shed in the clubhouse after answering some tough questions after another blown save in Saturday's game. And the Mets are reeling because their closer, who was once the best in the game, has looked like the guy that we saw in 2019. That was a big reason why the Mets were unable to succeed that year. And you just hope that he can find his way and get out of the funk here. But I guess just some preliminary statements on Edwin Diaz, what you saw this weekend, if there's anything to fix or if it's all just in his head at this point.
Well, I think they're doing the right thing. I think it's time. They gave him plenty of time to try to iron out those mechanical kinks. And it just hasn't happened. And I think that's where it starts. He needs to be able to get to arm side, down and away with his fastball, with his slider, and he's just not doing it. And that's a mechanical thing. Now that's leaked over into the more important thing, which is the mental side of the game.
Right.
He is at a loss. He's lost confidence, and that's where we're at. So they're doing the right thing by pulling him out. They gave him enough lead time to try to figure it out. He hasn't. I still think he's going to be elite and back to normal Edwin. It just didn't happen so fast enough for it to kind of figure itself out. So this is where we are. It's tough to see such a good guy go through this. It's tough to see it because the Mets need every win that they're going for. But it's the right time. They have other guys that have stepped in. Reed Garrett did a great job last night. He'll be back. He just needs a reset.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I honestly thought that putting him in Saturday's game with the 4-1 lead was a smart decision. I know that there was a lot of discourse about that, how it's a non-save, but you needed an outing with some breathing room for him to get some confidence back. I thought it was the right call. Instead, he hangs the slider down in the zone to Josh Bell, which is where he likes it, and he hits an absolute nuke. I mean, 20 feet beyond the center field wall, which is already deep as is. So the stuff is there. I mean, he's just hanging sliders, which is really, the what Edwin Diaz can't do. I mean, even the dipping velocity didn't have me that worried. It's when the slider doesn't have that down and in zip or down and away zip that you mentioned is where he's going to get beat, because he has no real strikeout pitch in that case, and he's going to get hit hard because he's throwing the ball hard. But it's nice to highlight Reed Garrett, who had a 6-out save yesterday, struck out 4 people. It looks like the Mets have an option there, which is nice. Ottavino has gotten some saves for us. Brooks Raley is no longer an option, so the Mets kind of need to turn to Reed, and he came up big for them yesterday. That was a win they definitely needed. You can't get swept out of Miami and expect to, just right the course right away.
The truth is they should have won 2 out of 3 in Philly.
Yeah.
Or at least split with Philly out of the 4 games. And then they should have won 2 out of 3 here. They've kind of been playing that where they blow one, get their butts kicked, and then win the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had Reed Garrett in the 8th. Just struck out the side with his splitty. He looked so good that Mendoza was like, yeah, let's let him run. Nimmo gives him a little bit of breathing room, but Ottavino was there. So he's going to play the hot hand. He's going to play what he feels instinctively, what the matchups say. Mendoza's going to go with whatever the matchup is best. But Reed Garrett, Ottavino, Jorge Lopez, it's going to be some combination of those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen ERA has been good this year, even despite Diaz's struggles as of late. They're 6th in MLB, 3rd in the NL. Jorge Lopez had a huge moment in their lone win in Philadelphia where the Mets were tied in the 10th inning. They didn't score the ghost runner, which, by the way, I think is a larger discussion. The Mets have had a really, really tough time scoring ghost runners this entire season. It happened twice this week. It cost them the game on Saturday. But Jorge Lopez coming in induces the double play and gets out of that jam. It leads to a Mets win. They have options. They have bodies back there. Drew Smith should be coming back. So the big thing that I'm curious to see, I'm not worried about the bullpen. I'm curious to see how Edwin Diaz fares when it's not the 9th inning, because I don't remember the last time we've seen that, if we have seen that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about long-term Edwin Diaz. It's how is he going to bounce back? He's got to basically throw bullpens.
Yeah.
Like it's practice. So he needs to get into a game that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
A game that's maybe negative where the Mets are losing by a couple of runs, where he could just go and work because he needs to get there. Otherwise, he's going to have to go on the IL and head back to Florida and work on this stuff because it's a mental block. That's part of the, being injured. Like his brain is working against him. So again, I'm not worried about him over the course of the season, to be honest, but this next month or next couple of weeks could be iffy.
Yeah, I mean, we saw someone like Alek Manoah go back to his development complex, try and fix his stuff. He had a great start yesterday, but it's a different scenario. Exactly different scenario, because starting pitcher, closer, even outside
he doesn't have Diaz's stuff,
right? And
Diaz's fix is so close.
Yeah,
all he has to do is get to that, whatever that finishing point is. Again, they did it perfect to me, like the front office and the coaching staff. And do I sound okay? Because in my head it sounds terrible.
You sound like a different man, but you sound great.
Does it sound? Can you understand the words?
Oh yeah, no. Jack's been adjusting you. You sound fine.
So they were letting him pitch and try to fix the mechanical issue, which I love because he was right there.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the season, he would throw like 50-50 bad sliders, but then he would throw a really good one. And it was harder to catch up to. They started to hit it, and now he's thinking about it, and now it's 100% bad sliders.
Yeah.
And the ones that actually are good are 4 feet out of the batter's box on the other side. So they let him get to that point because he's a veteran. He's worked himself out of these hundreds of times, literally. You're always battling these mechanical issues, and now it's out of balance. Again, I have no doubt that he'll figure it out. I just hope he gets the opportunities quick enough in a game and doesn't have to go to Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Mets can afford him going to Florida. With that, I mean, there's bad memories with him in Miami. There's him pitching with the pitch clock for the first time. If you guys can hear, Jerry's taking a little sidebar now. But outside of all that, the Mets pitching was kind of just a similar story this weekend. Christian Scott struggled really for the first time in his start against Miami. Sean Manaea has been a nice showing, this entire month really, but Luis Severino pitching into the seventh inning. We were asking for that length. We got it, but it ended up costing them at some key runs late in game that ended up enabling a Miami comeback. And when the offense has been operating the way it has, just not coming up with the big hit, it's really tough for the Mets to win those games. It's especially tough when they score 9 runs in a game and still manage to lose that game. And a big reason for that has just been Francisco Lindor re-entering a slump. It was a really tough Philadelphia series for him. He goes hitless in the 4-game set. Miami, it didn't look great either up until that last game where he collected 2 hits. He's 3 for 29 over his last 7 games played. So the Mets are not going to be able to get anything going if they don't have someone like Francisco Lindor or Edwin Diaz, their star players, contributing day in and day out to wins. We haven't mentioned Mark Vientos yet, who did come up in a change of pace for the roster. He got a couple starts with the lefties pitching, and he did pretty well. Vientos went 4 for 14, hit a couple doubles, one off Ranger Suarez, a couple walks, and a couple RBIs. I'm assuming that the Mets are going to be playing that hot hand a little bit more. That's what Carlos Mendoza likes to do. He's been playing hot hands. That's why Reed Garrett got a save opportunity. That's why Vientos could get some starts later in the week over Brett Beatty. But yeah, the Mets just have a lot of bodies right now, not all of them firing on all cylinders. There are, bright spots across the roster, but, it's kind of the same song and dance as it has been this entire month. The star players aren't playing like stars, and it's really hard for the Mets to win games when that happens. Hey, how you doing, pal?
Yeah, thank you. I had a little coughing fit.
No one even noticed.
I'm not gonna last long on this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say a couple of things. Mm-hmm. I thought Vientos is looking good. I don't think they're going to play the hot hand. I think they're gonna
platoon.
A platoon.
Okay.
I hope they play the hot hand. I think Vientos looks great at the plate. On the other end of the field, Beatty looks really good defensively. I still don't know what Vientos can do in the field. I haven't seen it enough. Lindor's riding this.
Yeah.
That's tough. It's good to get Nimmo back. Tyrone Taylor looks good. This team has fight.
You have fight too right now, man. You're pushing through. You're persevering. Yeah, no, you really hit the nail on the head with that, I think. Harrison Bader's been a bright spot as Jerry walks away to catch his breath again. Riding a 6-game hit streak, which is nice. There was some headlines with him asking for more playing time, which I thought a lot of fans didn't take kindly to. But he's answered that call. He's had a 6-game hit streak amongst the losing skid. Came up with some huge hits in the Philadelphia win, a game that he didn't even start.
I got to leave you alone on this one, Jolly. Sorry,
I understand,
buddy.
Jerry.
I'm not going to be able to recoup in time.
I understand. Don't worry, pal.
I'm sorry. Hats off to you, my friend.
Hats off to Jerry, guys. Wish him well. He's got to get his voice back a little bit.
Bye, Jax. Sorry, guys.
You're okay. So as you guys heard, Jerry Blevins has to depart. Bravo to him for even showing up. He had to do his SNY gig over the weekend, lost his voice. So I'm going to carry out the rest of the episode. And as per usual, not ton of good things to report on the Mets end. They lose 3 out of 4 in Philadelphia. They lose 2 out of 3 in Miami. What's weird is that they are a game above 500 since their 0-5 start, which is a stat that I keep circling back to because it has felt so much worse than that. I think because of how poorly May has gone, it really does feel like the team is just spiraling. But if you subtract that horrendous start, which I think we've all tried to forget, the Mets have just been kind of keeping their head at water level, and there's still a chance for them to spring above it. I keep seeing the wild card standings pop up, which I think, it's a little early in the season to be looking at standings, but I do think it rationalizes the viewpoint of the National League, which has been kind of underwhelming. Like, you have the Phillies and Braves in there who are going to be great teams every year. The Dodgers are going to run the West. And then outside of that, the National League has been kind of just anybody's game, the land of opportunities. And the Mets had a 21-12 26 record, which is pretty dreadful, are still only 2 games out of a playoff spot right now. There's a lot of games left to play, and you can spin that in a positive way or a negative way. That's up to you as the fan. So I think the Mets are bearing that in mind, and they're still showing a lot of emotion when they're winning these games, which I do appreciate. It helps electrify me as a fan when they've been playing a lot of poor baseball lately. But May's been tough. They're 6-11 in May. They've lost 7 of their last 10 games. All of those came against NL East opponents. We had mentioned a lot on earlier podcasts that we thought this was going to be a good test for the team to see where they land in the division. They always kind of felt like that middling third place team, but if you can beat up on the Marlins and the Nationals, there's a chance for you to rack up some key wins. Instead, they failed their first test essentially on the road where they've typically played better. And now they don't face another NL East opponent until they go to DC in the first week of June. They'll play the Nationals for 3 in DC. Then you have 2 games with Philadelphia, which I believe are the London games, which I keep forgetting is a thing this year. The Mets are going to play in London. And then 3 games with the Marlins after that. So that'll be the next time they get a chance to get fat in their own division. So really disappointing showing from them. They were shut out for the 5th time this season in that first game too, which has been really frustrating. I know that they came in late on their flight because of the extra inning game in Philadelphia, but it's really tough to see the offense just fall completely flat, especially when Brandon Nimmo's not there. It almost feels like they're missing just a cog in the machine that makes the whole thing go. And he wasn't there for that first game, and that's how it went. And it's going to be tough to win games when Christian Scott falters after he was so good in his first 2 starts, but that's just going to be part of the growing pains for a young pitcher. And the Mets, speaking of their rotation, have kind of a weird situation going on. Getting the ball in tonight's game when we go to Cleveland is Tyler McGill. He's going to be making his return, his first start since the first series of the season. Really curious to see what he's capable of and, if that spot sticks. David Peterson has been really good in rehab as well. And then Adrian Hauser is back in the rotation and getting the ball in game 2. So maybe it's a case of a 6-man rotation, getting guys extra rest. But 3 faces who have all struggled to their own extent in this Cleveland series because Quintana will get the ball in the final game. But the Mets need starting pitching. Sean Manaea gave them their best start of the week, in my opinion, in that final game in Miami. 5 innings, 2 earned runs. I think you take that considering what we saw prior. And that was enough for the Mets to get a win. It gave the bullpen a little bit of rest. And Manaea has quietly had a nice month. He's been a 3.17 ERA in May. And the big thing for me is that, we talked a lot about last episode, the walks have just been a terrible product to watch from a baseball fan standpoint. It's really tough to just watch pitchers in and out, every single batter working full counts and just struggling to locate any of their pitches. Manaea has rectified that issue. He was the main culprit of the rotation in terms of just walks and constantly dealing with base runners. He has a 1.06 whip in May compared to a 1.43 whip in April. So it's been a really welcome change. He's been living in the zone more. He hasn't allowed more than 3 earned runs in 6 straight starts. So the Mets might have found something here. I feel like a lot of the shine has gone to Severino, who, if he had came out in the 6th inning in his, start in Miami, you're looking at a 6-inning, 2 earned run start. A lot more shine goes to him there. Instead, he pitches into the 7th and struggles. I think Manaea deserves some love as well. He's been something of a stopper for the Mets. And I think I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure they've won every start he's pitched in May, which the Mets haven't won a lot of games in May. So take that for what it's worth. But we mentioned the Mets getting shut out for the 5th time in that first game. There have been some bright spots in the lineup. Brandon Nimmo, of course, is the namesake there when he's on the field. We haven't seen a lot of him lately. He's been injured. He still has a 920 OPS this month. His 29 walks are tied for 7th in MLB. And of course, he came up with the big home run as insurance in the 8th inning of yesterday's game. It feels like he's been the center of every big moment in this Mets season, his clutch hitting, especially in the Atlanta series from April. He was big in those games as well. So hopefully he's healthy and the Mets can start playing him again every day. But if you've been watching, you've been noticing that Carlos Mendoza has shook up the lineup quite a lot. Pete Alonso getting some shine in the 2-hole. Francisco Lindor leading off amidst the slump. And I'm not sure how much that'll work in the future. Lindor did get 2 hits in the final game, but it's hard to say whether he's a fit there or not. But what does feel like a fit is Brandon Nimmo in the 3-hole because you're getting him more RBI chances. We've seen a lot of that power stroke, even with the on-base numbers. I kind of hope that's something that sticks, but the Mets don't really have an answer for the leadoff spot if Nimmo's not there. You'll probably see Tyrone Taylor filtered in there, maybe Harrison Bader, who's on that hit streak, or Francisco Lindor if they can't find another place for him. But when you have Nimmo in the 3-hole and then JD Martinez right behind him, it's a nice 1-2 punch in the middle of that Mets lineup, and JD Martinez has really come alive in May. His last 8 games, he's hitting .375 with a pair of home runs. He hit really well in the Phillies series as well. I tweeted something from my account on their win in Philadelphia where all the core players, all the key factors in that game were David Stern's 1-year deal signings. JD Martinez came up with a huge hit in extra innings. Jake Diekman got the save. Jorge Lopez escaped the 10th inning. These are all guys that Stearns brought in. These are all also guys that might be gone by the deadline because they're on these 1-year deals, on these rental deals, and playing very well. So they're going to be the key to the Mets' success. They also might be a big reason why the Mets are sellers at the deadline because they could assume a lot in terms of prospect capital. But for the time being, them playing well is a huge factor for this team because we mentioned Lindor's struggles, Diaz's struggles, and of course, Brett Baty has re-entered his sort of slump. He looks a lot more like the guy we saw last year when he got demoted in August, which is unfortunate because we really got to see, I think, the best version of Brett Baty in April, and now he's not going to be playing every day, and I think that's warranted because Vientos has swung a good bat. Even Baty made a couple errors in this series as well, so that hasn't looked great as well. It's just tough, man. The team is not firing on all cylinders, and you know that the talent is there. If you've been watching every day, you know that this is a talented team. They've shown it to you. They had that 7-game win streak in April, but right now there are no pieces being put together, and it just kind of feels like the team needs the calendar to turn over to June, which is a weird thing to say if you've been watching Mets baseball your entire life. June has been typically their worst month, always. They're always in some sort of June swoon, but the Mets have had a really tough schedule in May. They've played a lot of good teams between the Braves, the Rays, the Cubs, the Phillies, but there's no excuses for what happened this weekend. That is a series you absolutely have to win. You have to come away with 2 out of 3 there. You can even excuse falling flat in that first game if you win the last 2. And it felt like the Mets had a win in their hands, and it just kind of slipped away, even though I thought Mendoza made the right decision putting Diaz in that situation. You got to get him out there. You got to get him right because it's going to be really hard to win games when Edwin Diaz is not himself. Coming up, they're going to Cleveland for 3 games. I'm really curious to see what the reception is for Francisco Lindor. I assume it'll be positive. The guy was traded. He didn't, walk away in free agency or anything, but it's going to be his first time back in Progressive Field since that trade, which is hard to believe because it's been 4 years at this point. So the Mets will be going there. I'm hoping that'll get him turned right as well. His best numbers were in Cleveland. So hopefully Lindor has a big series against his old team. If you remember last year, that big 11-10 win in extra innings, he comes up with that walk-off hit to end it. That's probably maybe the best game from 2023 in an otherwise pretty dismal season. That series was a highlight. So hopefully the Mets can find that magic again and get some wins out there. I mentioned it before in the probables. Tyler McGill is going to get the first game against Ben Lively, who's been having some sort of career renaissance with Cleveland. They're just a pitching factory, and they always seem to find innings from the most unlikely of places. So he'll get the ball in game 1. Game 2, a familiar face pitching against us, Carlos Carrasco, who's been a part of their rotation because of injuries. He hasn't pitched great, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Mets fare against him. They know him well, so hopefully that'll be a factor there as well. And then friend of John Boy Media, Tristan McKenzie, will get the ball in game 3. So you're avoiding, I think, the best of Cleveland's rotation, but at the same time, they're avoiding the best of our rotation. So I'm assuming it'll be a high slugging series. That remains to be seen. But the Mets have played better on the road this season. They need that trend to continue because after this Cleveland series, you're coming up on a 10-game homestand against all NL West teams. 3 games with the Giants, who have been beleaguered by injuries. They just lost Jung-Hoo Lee for the entire season. You'll get them for 3 games. Then the Dodgers come to town in the middle of the week, and that's always a little bit scary. If you remember, it seems like forever ago, the Mets did win a series in LA against the Dodgers, and they have a chance to get a winning record against them this year if they can come away with that series. And then 4 games against the Arizona Diamondbacks, the reigning National League champions who have had kind of their own inconsistencies and struggles. So this takes us through the end of May. It's going to be interesting to see how the Mets finish out this month. There's a window for them to climb back to 500 and kind of make May a non-significant month. Or if you lose all these series, you're looking at potentially a month of the season that tanked your entire record, and that's going to be tough to overcome. So a lot to prove in this next week of Mets baseball. They need to wash away what happened in Philadelphia, I think, but a lot of close losses too. It's just been a frustrating watch these past 2 weeks. Ever since that Cardinal series that they didn't get to finish out, they've just been losing a ton of close games, not getting clutch hits when they need, and Alonso and Lindor, there's not much you can say, which is unfortunate because when the Mets are great, they're pretty much all we talk about. But that'll probably do it for this episode. There's not too much to recap beyond that. I think take away the positives as you can. Look out for Mark Vientos to get more playing time, and hopefully JD Martinez and Brandon Nimmo are in that lineup every day, being able to produce outside of what's been a pretty dismal offense. Look out for who's going to get the ninth inning ball if the Mets are winning a game. Is it going to be Reed Garrett? Is it going to be Adam Ottavino? Will they test Edwin Diaz again? That's going to be a storyline as well, but hopefully the Mets can come away with some nice starting pitching, some clutch hitting against the weaker side of the Cleveland pitching staff, and beat a team that has had a really good season so far, because the Mets have been able to play up to their competition in the past. This weekend, they played down to their competition, certainly, and lost a game they should have won. 2 games out of a wild card spot. It's too early to look at the standings, but keep that in mind if you're an optimist viewpoint. If you're a negative viewpoint, I'm sure that's the last thing you want to hear, and I understand that. But 2 games out of a wild card spot, 1 good week, and the Mets are right back in the thick of things. We'll see. We saw the Padres get swept by the Rockies, then they go to Atlanta, and then they win a series there. They win on Sunday Night Baseball. They're in that wild card spot right now. The Mets could have that exact same week, and I wouldn't be totally surprised. It's a talented team. They've just been tough to watch lately. So that'll do it for this episode of Shea Station. Send Jerry your best wishes, and also, if you're interested, make sure you cop a bottle of the Field of Dreams whiskey. It goes on sale today at 3 p.m. Click the link in the description, get your bottle. I'm going to be getting 2. And Jerry, I know it would mean a lot to him. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Hopefully Jerry has his voice back.
Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time, where we'll be back.
Station.